Do your children go to school in Melbourne? Are you interested in how their school might be shaping them for the future? I'm Crystal, a regular Melbourne mum interested in all things to do with schools. In this podcast, I want to talk to the people in the education system in Melbourne, including parents, students, and maybe even some principals to get a better understanding of what goes on in schools and how they're shaping our kids. It's time to go to school on the Melbourne Schools podcast. Hi parents, today we're joined by Dr. Timothy Tan, the visionary founder of Square Academy. Tim's journey is inspiring. Accepted into vet school at Cornell University, but turning down the offer and becoming a marine biologist and published researcher instead, he later discovered his passion for education while earning his PhD at Melbourne Uni. With over a decade of teaching experience, including mentoring thousands of students, Tim is dedicated to innovative, interdisciplinary teaching. Tim is an advocate for real education that is exciting, inspiring, and purposeful. His education philosophy involves teaching his students to be creative and learning to think, rather than learning just for the sake of exams. Now, as the head of Square Academy in Hawthorn, Tim combines his expertise and passion to help students excel in critical thinking and academic success. Hello, Tim.
Hello. Thank you for the very nice introduction.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I didn't hear that before, so that's very nice. Thank you.
So, just launching right into it, can you tell us a bit about your early education? Because I do wonder where your beliefs of education come from. It's quite interesting to me that you started schooling in Singapore.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, grow up wanting to be a teacher, I guess. So I'm from Singapore. I grew up like most, Asian students in Singapore, I guess. I went to a decent school. I didn't really like studying that much. School, Singapore schooling is pretty, taxing. And, very, the kind of schooling that most people would be used to, right? Just academically based and that sort of stuff. I didn't do particularly well. I mean, I like to play a lot and everything, so I didn't really do that well until like it was later on when I decided to focus a little bit more on in my studies, and then I ended up doing better. I came to. I mean, I always liked doing science. I liked animals. I liked zoology. I liked marine biology, and so I did our version of like VC, I guess. I did basically your general paper, which is English, and then triple science, so physics, chem, and biology. Yeah, so I liked science, and I did pretty well. And I came to Australia after year 12 because I really wanted to do marine biology. And that's not really the kind of thing that you can do in Singapore. Singapore has good universities, but like I think from what I researched back then, the the marine biology course, in Singapore is like one unit, right, as opposed to like a full degree over here, kind of thing. I came. My parents weren't too excited about like doing science or zoology or marine biology. A lot of parents, they want me to be a doctor, right? Wasn't really fond of humans, which is ironic given that I teach now. But then they said, how about you do vet instead? It's kind of like almost sort of a doctor kind of thing. So I was like, okay, I guess that's all right. And so I got into the well, back then it was the Bachelor of Veterinary Science. This was in Melbourne Uni. This was an undergraduate degree. And when I enrolled in it, I kind of got the idea that I wanted to do a double degree instead. I didn't want to just do veterinary science. I wanted to do like a science degree with zoology and marine biology as well, because the veterinary science degree was mostly focused on companion animals, so basically dogs and cats and everything, and farm animals, which and I was really more interested in like exotic wildlife and stuff like that. So yeah, sorry, that was that like way off topic. So you asked me about my I didn't remember a lot. So
No, that's okay.
but yeah, so my education in Singapore basically was like, yeah, it's pretty standard, I guess.
No, really.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because we coming from Australia and being educated in Australia, I don't know what a standard Singapore education is. And we hear so much about it. Like, it feels like almost like an aspirational education system for Australia. And, I hear it talked about in the group all the time. So that post about how the education system in Australia is broken, I find it really interesting because I've wondered it for a long time. Like, you hear people talking about it all the time. The Australian education is so far behind. And, we're just basically Australia's lucky and dumb, basically, is what they're saying. And that's why we're doing so well. And compared with places like China, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, basically all the Asian countries, where kids are made to like sit exams from the time they're in nappies. And they do tutoring. Like I know people who do this. Like they do tutoring to like 10 o'clock at night after school, and then they go to sleep and they wake up and do it again the next day. Every day. Whereas the education system in Australia is obviously much different from that. My questions are like, to what end? Like, does it make society, like, what happens after school? Like, does it make society better when you grind that much in childhood? Like when because it is a sacrifice of time, isn't it? Like, you sacrifice basically your entire day, every day, to academic pursuit.
Yeah.
When I think most people would rather be doing something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
exactly.
What is the point?
Yeah, so I mean we covered that a little bit, right? So it's by what measure would you say that it is bad or broken? I expect that the measure is basically academics. So in terms of if you made Australian students and let's say Singapore students or whatever sit the same tests at the same age or whatever it is, could they answer more questions? The Singapore students, that is, right? Which I think potentially, likely, yes, they can answer more questions. They can answer more difficult.
The Singaporean students,
yeah, right,
yep.
But then what? Like what?
Yeah, and then what? So, that's my question.
And I mean, the reality is, I don't know. I mean, it would be nice to have a poll, but I mean, anecdotally, right? Most people who are adults will agree that a lot of what they studied, right, in school, was not very useful.
Yeah, so, that's true.
That's true. Some parts would be useful, sure, I know. And so if okay, so some parts are useful, fine, right? But a lot of the nitty-gritty detail is not very useful because you won't go into that field. So I guess my thought would be if the nitty-gritty detail is not that useful, then why aren't we focusing on the big picture questions? Which will always be useful. I mean, the stuff that I taught my students, I think it will always be useful. And so why aren't we focusing on that first?
Yeah.
And then, if you have time left over, then do the nitty-gritty detail, I guess. Right? But I think the reality is that it's a lot easier, it's a lot more reassuring to just, put a number on it. Right? Like, okay, it's an A, right? How do you get an A plus? Or it's an 80, how do you get a 90?
That's a very Asian way of thinking.
Right, yeah. Right. Okay, okay,
how come you didn't get an A plus?
Well, Asians will be, you got 98, how do you get a 99, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why is it not 100? What?
Yeah. So I mean, so it's easier to do that, right? Just the same way it's easier for universities to grade students. The same way it's easier. But the reality is, in the workplace, they don't hire you based on your results. They don't hire you based on, you've got 99.85 ATAR instead of 99.75. So I'm going to pick you instead, or whatever it is. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, and in fact, I mean, I'd argue that in Singapore, they're actually adopting the Western style of like more play-based kind of stuff.
They're trying to do this.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it's like
really? Oh.
the grass is always greener on the other side kind of thing. It's like,
Oh, that's
so they're
interesting.
actually trying to like,
So they're
you know,
going,
incorporate.
wow, look at the Australian education system. It's
Yeah.
so much better.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing
I
here.
mean, this is more for like, you know, like the early levels, right? Because you kind of
Yeah.
realize as well that, you know, like what's the point of like, you know, going through like rigorous
Pushing
tutoring or
kids.
whatever in like, you know,
Yeah.
primary school or whatever it is. And so they're trying to do a bit more play-based learning. I mean, you know, like I hear that, you know, there's quite a bit of demand for like people who are educated in Australia, as in like have studied education in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, to
Yeah.
kind of go back to teach or something like that. That's why I hear. Yeah.
I wonder why. Like, I mean, are they realizing there's something amiss with such a rigorous education system? Because I do hear that a lot as well. Like people coming over from Asia and going, I don't want to put my kids through what I went through in Singapore.
Mm, mm,
And coming here because of that, because it is less rigorous, because it is play based.
mm,
Um,
mm.
does Singaporean society look at Australia and go, oh, maybe we should do it more like them?
I mean, that's possible. Again, of course, I don't
Mm,
know like what the, you know, policymakers are thinking, I
yeah.
guess. But in general, there is. I mean, I think it's quite at least common. I wouldn't say I'm not sure if it's like fact or anything, but I think it's kind of like common perception that things like stress levels, even depression, suicide, all that kind of stuff in Japan, Singapore, you know, there's sort
Yeah,
of
that's fairly
high.
well documented.
Yeah,
With kids,
it's
yeah.
pretty it's higher than, you know, in Western countries. Of course, Western
Mm,
countries also suffer a lot for different
hmm.
reasons, I think.
Yes, I think different reasons.
But not purely because, you know, like, oh, if you don't get into a uni or don't get in this course, then, you know, your life is over kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I mean, obviously people here also struggle with mental health and everything, but
yeah.
I guess I don't know. I mean, the way I see it,
Hmm.
academics is it's useful, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you can teach it. I'm not saying just play and don't do anything else. I think it's a you need to have a
Hmm.
very good balance. And if you are skilled at teaching, then you can incorporate that fun in with the learning. And
Hmm.
you know, again, like how efficiently, you know, do people teach, right? Like if you're just going to deliver a class that's just, you know, reading off a script or whatever, then obviously it's not going to be as efficient as someone who actually knows how to teach or knows how to engage with students and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that your this philosophy about being engaging and creative and also interdisciplinary teaching, do you think that that sort of stems from what you experienced, or like from your early education, or where do you reckon that sort of philosophy comes from?
Mm. That's a good question. I mean, I think I didn't find my like education basically like, grade 1 to grade 12. I mean, I didn't find it that honestly. I don't have many like, oh wow, like that was
Fond
a
memories.
yeah. I don't like I can't say that it was like, you know, great and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I
Mm,
guess I was often stressed, I guess, for like tests and, you
mm,
know, and all that kind of thing. So but I don't think like I actively like hated it.
mm. It was what you knew, I think,
Yeah,
probably. Like it
it's
was
just more of like, you know,
that's
yeah,
just what
that's
you
just
do,
life,
yeah, as a
right?
kid,
And
yeah.
you know, a lot of people still feel that way, right? They just don't.
Yeah,
They
I think
just
all like
yeah.
to some extent, like when you're there, you sort of do, well, this is what's just what life is, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was really like after I started teaching myself that, you know, I learned how to teach through
Mm-hmm.
teaching because I was in when I was doing my PhD, I was doing a lot of teaching on the side, right, to see uni students and a lot of practicals and all that kind of stuff. You know, I learned. I mean, I'm not an extrovert by any means. I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually very introverted, and when I first started, you know, it was, you know, like teaching is quite daunting, and you know, you learn. And after a few years, I was just really, no, I mean, you know, it grows you as a person as well when you teach. I'm sure every teacher can tell you that.
Mm.
But also, I learned what I feel like I learned what works and what doesn't work, right? And I've never really been afraid to challenge whatever the norm is. Like I always ask
Mm.
them, so
Mm-hmm.
why are you doing this? Like why are we doing this way? Why can't we do it some other way or whatever it is? I just don't really assume stuff too much. And so that naturally helped me to try different things and see what works. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess I found like the most the most impactful moments were the ones that were not really about academics. And that's kind of where I got my passion from.
Oh,
That's
what do
it's
you
more
mean by that? What do you mean by that? The most
so
impactful moments.
like when I was in or tutoring. Well, I guess I was tutor. I guess at uni academic at university. Um, I would run classes, right? So tutorials, like a regular class, 30 people, whatever it is. And they obviously I teach them. I was this was mostly biology, and so obviously I taught them biology. But I think the ones that if you have a look at like say things that people have wrote about me, like when they wrote, the stuff that's on my website and everything, that's not
The
like
testimonials, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not really a testimony. It's more like these are actually just things that people have said to me, right? So I didn't ask them to say anything or whatever it is. They just sent me an email or whatever
Oh,
it is
okay.
saying that,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so it comes over and over again. Like it's not oh thanks to you I learned how the respiratory system works. Like whatever. I'm like obviously I help with that, but it's really the impactful moments, the moments like we were talking about. Okay, so one of the tutorials, obviously formally we were supposed to talk about. I think this was about epidemiology, so how diseases spread basically. So that was the topic for the week, I guess roughly. Although we've got quite a lot of freedom to do what we want, so I actually spent half a tutorial just doing like my own stuff. I actually said, okay, well, I'm going to show you this couple of videos, right? And I want you to, as you watch the videos, just think about this question, right? Think about this question: why do you want to be a doctor? These were biomedical students, so these are all cream of the crop, a lot of 99.95 ATAR kind of students. So they're all very bright and everything, right? And so I asked them, so why do you want to be a doctor, right? And like how many students can actually answer that, right? Like it's actually not
For the
that.
prestige and the money.
Yeah, right. So
Because my parents told me to.
yeah, exactly, right, exactly. So I showed them a couple of videos, and these videos were about, because I think there was one video about I think it was someone who was, I can't remember what the other videos. I think one of the videos that was more impactful was really about this leper colony in Thailand. And they showed this leper colony, this people, who have, uh, limbs that are chopped off because of leprosy, to stop the disease spreading. Testimonies of elderly women who had to like chop their own fingers off because they just couldn't stop hurting and all that kind of stuff. And so, and at the end of the videos, I asked them, so okay, why do you want to be a doctor? Right? Like, is it because your parents asked you to? Is it because you think that it's what smart people do? Is it because you want to be rich and famous? Is it because for one thing, a lot of those reasons are not really genuine. Like, being like if you really wanted to earn money, I guess being a business person or something probably earns you a lot more money, or trading even, to be honest. We talked about before about how much like tradies earn in general, right? But so I asked them that, right? So is that the reason why, right? Or is it because you want to help people, right? Is it because like what is going to really give you value, purpose in life? And actually, I told them, kind of like giving like a mini tutorial now again. but actually that very the first time I gave that kind of like, I was going to do that tutorial. The first time I was going to do that morning, it was very cold. It was winter in Melbourne. I was walking to uni. I was walking to the train station in Flinders in uni. And I remember it was very cold because I had gloves on, those fingerless gloves on, and I was still putting my hands in my pocket. I remember that. And as I walked, I saw a homeless person. I saw a homeless person, and he didn't have gloves on his hands. And people were walking past, right, like most people do, because like it's awkward. You don't really know how to
Yes.
relate to homeless people in a sense.
Mm.
And they were mostly ignoring him. And as they were ignoring him, this homeless person was saying to everyone, "Oh, have a nice day. Have a good day. Stay safe. Keep warm." And these were people who, these people who are ignoring him, right? And this is a homeless person. And like this homeless, to me, like that person actually touched me. Like he actually made an impact in my life, and he's a person without a home, right? Because it made me think about why I'm doing what I'm doing, why to be grateful and all that kind of thing, all this sort of stuff. And by extension, that person also impacted the lives of a lot of my students, like hundreds of my students, because I told the same story to hundreds of my students, right? And so, if a person without a home can make an impact in life, in so many lives, like even mine, I was supposed to be, oh, I'm a doctor and all that kind of stuff, then you can make an impact if you wanted to. If you want to help people, you can. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be anything else. You can still help people. I'm not saying don't be a doctor. I'm saying that if you focus on what's really important, I feel, in life, then things will be a lot easier. Things will be a lot more fun. Things will, you don't stress as much and you do better as well, right? And I think I made a post before about how you do actually do better if you are not stressed. And so I don't know. I mean, things like that, right? Like my students actually, that's what they remember. If they think of me, that's what they remember. They don't think of all the academic stuff that I taught them. I teach them a lot of skills, a lot of
Life
academic stuff as
lessons.
well. But that is what they remember. And so over time, I see that happening over and over and over again. And I realize that's actually what kids need to learn, I guess.
Okay. Yeah,
Mm,
that's interesting. So
mm,
how do you weave it into your interdisciplinary teaching? Like how do you weave these life lessons into,
mm,
say, like because what you're offering is like, biology and chemistry, but
mm.
then you
Yeah.
also teach.
Yeah. I mean, well, I taught that during a biology class.
Oh,
So,
really? Oh, because
yeah, I mean,
they were
like
doctors.
that was a biology class, right? I just basically I taught them what they needed to know, and then I took half a class out and I told them, okay, I'm going to do something else today, right? I want you to think about this question. So, I mean, you can weave it in, right? And I think that's really why like forming connections is important. I think, I mean, I'd go as far as to say that I think maybe it's controversial or something, but I think that the concept of subjects is a bit outdated. Like the idea that you're studying chemistry or biology or anything else, it's a little bit outdated. I mean, you can study it; it's fine. It's not a problem. But that's not what I think students really need to learn. I think what students really need to learn is how to make connections between different ideas. You know, I think it was Steve Jobs that says that creativity is just connecting things,
Yep.
and
Yep.
the people who really make big changes in life, in society, are the ones who can come up with new ideas, not the
Yes.
ones who just follow whatever their boss is saying, right? I mean, nowadays, even with AI, you don't even need people for that. You just get someone to,
Chat
some
GPT
robot
to
to do
do
it for
it.
you, right? So, I think in the past, right? I mean, if you're talking about like 150 years ago, right? Without internet, without everything else, then you if a famous lecturer comes to your university or something, right? There's no email, there's no whatever it is. Being there is like the one chance that you get physically to actually listen to what the guy has to say, pretty much, right? I mean, in that context, that kind of makes sense. That kind of makes sense that, okay, you need good students, you need to keep quiet because the guy is there only for a short time. If you interrupt him, if you whatever, you're just wasting everyone's time, right? But that's not the case anymore, right? But we still teach like that, right? It's not, it shouldn't be one person just talking and everyone else just absorbing my brilliance or whatever, that kind of thing. It's not, it should be more collaborative. And in the past, there was a demand for very highly educated, I guess people in very specific jobs. But I think honestly, the demand for that has largely dropped off. I mean, there are a lot of people who can't find jobs and all that kind of stuff. It's evolving, I would say, right? So like the economy's evolving, society's evolving, and the skills needed are different. But I don't feel like the education is really, you know,
Evolving with along
yeah.
with it.
I
So
mean,
what would
it's a big system, so it's slow, it's bureaucratic, so it takes time. But I think a lot of people still don't really realize that it needs to change. Which is a bit of a problem.
so what do
Mm.
you think are the skills that are required for the future then? So what if it's not that, then what is it now?
Well, I mean, I guess I've made no secret that I really appreciate, I really value integrity and and like what people call soft skills, but I mean, it's not really soft skills. I mean, again, it's soft because they consider academics as the hard skills, right? So, but I think integrity is important. I think a lot of the problems, I mean, we talk about bullying, we talk about injustice, all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, that's because we teach our students to compete with each other and fight for the top spot, and we value academics and everything, and then I don't like you then you wonder why when they grow up they start being cutthroat, whatever job they're in, that kind of thing, right? So I mean, I think to me it's things like critical thinking is important. I mean, in terms of, I guess, academic skills, critical thinking is important, creativity is important. In terms of, like, I guess, human skills, to me it's like compassion, integrity,
communication,
discipline, discipline, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So how do you teach that? Like creativity, and what was the other one you said? What was the first couple?
Creativity, critical thinking,
and critical thinking. Yeah. How do you actually teach that?
I mean, like if you think about it, like universities should be doing that, right? I mean, the idea is you go to university and you're supposed to just think about,
actually, not from my experience.
So I mean, that's a whole nother issue, right? About some of the problems that universities have, but even in the classroom, even in before university and everything, I think that should be taught, but it's often I don't know, maybe it's I think it's easier. It's easier to just say, just listen to me, right?
That's what my education, I feel like my entire education was like that. Like, this is what you need to learn. You go away and learn it.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you teach critical thinking and creativity?
So, which is why I say, I guess, partly integrity is important, right? Because if you are, let's say, I don't know, if you're not teachable, if the teacher themselves is not teachable, if they are not willing to listen to other points of view, for example, then it's hard to kind of like teach that in kids, right? And also because everyone's flawed, right? So like what I believe right now might not be true, or maybe I was mistaken, whatever it is, right? I need to be willing to admit that, okay, you know what, I was wrong, right? And if students ask me something, or if they disagree with me, I need to be able to say, oh, okay, so like, not get offended and go, okay, tell me about it. Like, why do you feel this way? That's interesting, right? And learn to say that instead of just being like offended or
so learn not to shut it down, basically. Like, learn not to shut down the critical thinking is part of teaching critical thinking. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
exactly. And but also that means that when I teach stuff, or when I think about what my curriculum is, I look for alternative points of view as well, right? So I mean, often, right, like, part of being critical is okay, critical sounds like a negative word, right? But it's more like being thoughtful, maybe, right? About what you believe in, is knowing what other opinions are out there, right? Knowing that, if I believe something, would I be willing to, say, watch a video about someone who disagrees with that idea? Right? And most people won't, right? I agree. I completely understand, right? It's like, you're tired, you don't really want to like do that sort of stuff.
I think most people prefer to live in an echo chamber.
Yeah, exactly.
It's much easier that way.
That's also, it's obviously you don't portray that view. You don't portray your disagreement in a very confrontational manner, right? You need to portray it in a manner that other people who don't agree with it can potentially accept if they've been open mind. And so, and also, that there's a lot of problem with like discourse in social media, everything as well, right?
It's very, I was thinking that too.
Very sensational. It's very, it encourages that, right? It encourages that sort of like, persuasion at all costs, basically, right? So like, I mean, that's what they teach in year 12, right? They teach you how to analyze persuasion in English, right? And so doesn't matter whether you use high modality coercion or bullying tactics or whatever it is, it's fine, right? As long as it works, it's fine. Right. And so, and it transcends into everything. It transcends into marketing, it transcends into like business and everything else.
Sales.
Right? So even if people think that you're a bad guy, it's okay as long as you make more money. Right. Like, if you all attention is positive, right? All attention is good. Doesn't matter what kind of attention it is. And so I don't know. So I guess for me, it's about being conscious. Okay, well, always adopting that kind of like teachable mindset, and then looking for new things to show people. Like, and that's why I always learn new things. Right? I'm always learning new things. I encourage my students to learn new things as well, right? And I think I mentioned before about how some of the weekly insights that I get my students to do and everything.
Mm.
It's really just picking something that you like and then just writing about it, like, and just and then I can pass it. Oh, okay, why do you think this way? And I can give them new
Mm.
ideas, and yeah, we spend time in class just like talking about ideas and everything, and they enjoy it. They absolutely love it. Yeah.
Mm. That's amazing. That's quite, seems quite simple, like
Mm,
just talking about
mm,
ideas.
mm.
But it's amazing. I'm just trying to think back into my education. When have I ever done that before?
Yeah. I mean, they might like probably in some like maybe philosophy course or something. Maybe they
Yeah,
talk about it
yeah,
a little
maybe
bit,
in philosophy.
but I feel like that should be the case like all the time, right? Now, of course, I mean
Mm,
to be fair, I mean I think I did the reality is we're part of a system where you're encouraged to compartmentalize things into different subjects. Like, oh,
mm-hmm,
you only teach this year level or this subject or whatever, right? Your expertise is in this area. And so I think naturally that kind of maybe disincentivizes or like ill equips teachers to be able to think out of the box, right?
mm-hmm,
Because they just I mean, since young, right? I mean, ever since young, you're trained that, oh, this is math, this is English, this is whatever.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. And so, but so I mean, I've done a lot of learning on my own in a sense because I've over time just realized that actually there's a lot of things that I enjoy learning now. I enjoy learning more now than when I was in school, which is a
because
little
you have
bit
a
sad, I guess, in
choice
some ways. But
now.
sorry,
Surely, because you have a choice now, right? Of what you
yeah,
learn and how you learn.
I
Whereas
guess
in
so.
school,
Yeah, yeah, that's
they
true.
told you what to learn, and this is how you need to do, and you
Mm,
need to be examined on it as well. So
mm. Mm. I mean, yeah,
it's
that's true. That's true. But I think it's also that it's also the way they teach, I guess, right? So
mm,
you know, like I mean, like I ask very even like I say biology, right? I ask very basic questions like, okay, what is okay, why don't you see very big cells? Right? Why
mm,
are cells only limited by like this small size, right? And prokaryotes are about like 1 millimeter at the max, right? Very very rare, but usually at the max, I think there's some that are like 1 millimeter, but very very rare.
mm,
Eukaryotes are again one. My 1 millimeter might be a bit big for a prokaryote anyway. So but about that size, right? So what's limiting that?
mm,
Right? And so even basic things like this, right? Like that is the kind of question that I think most students will be like, oh, gee, yeah, why don't you see like gigantic cells just like
mm.
walking around somewhere, right? Like what's the limit? And if you ask students that, they probably can't give you an answer because that's not
Mm.
what's covered. They study cell biology
No one
in
told me why, so
yeah yeah
that
and
would be how I
like
would think.
these are the things that like are very interesting,
Mm,
and I find interesting things all the time, really, just about anything.
mm-hmm,
And so if education could be like that, it could be fun, it could be purposeful. It's really like asking very basic questions, right? Because this is real
mm.
life. This is like, why don't we see gigantic
Yes.
cells walking around everywhere?
Mm,
um so that if we can teach this way, and as far as I can tell, my students really like learning that sort of
mm,
stuff, then, and I can see that a lot of students in general don't like school, right? And it's I think it's a shame as well because we even for say private school, I mean even public school, okay, it's free or mostly free, fine, but public school, lots of students pay a lot of money, or parents, I mean, pay a lot of money for private school,
mm-hmm,
and they don't really enjoy it, right? I
mm,
mean,
mm-hmm.
maybe they enjoy it in primary school, and then secondary school they just like, oh, it's
Just
okay,
have to get
you
through
know,
it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go tutoring on top of that, right?
Mm.
And in other countries, right, students would love to go to school.
Yes.
I routinely show, like I showed my son as well, right? Like I remind him, there are children in Afghanistan who
Yeah, who are
6 years
dying to go
old,
to
4 years
school.
old,
Yeah.
they have the big bricks, all day
Mm-hmm.
long.
Mm-hmm.
They when they ask them, oh, what do you wish? What do you wish for? They ask, oh, what is a wish? They don't even know what a wish is, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And then say, oh, I wish I can go to school. I wish that I can
Mm.
have a house, right? And then here we are paying so much money for it, and they're not enjoying it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame because and it's not supposed to be that way. I know because most young children love to learn.
Yes. Yep.
So to me, that means something is wrong somewhere.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Can we go back to you were talking about creativity? Um, Creativity is really interesting to me because I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I totally did not understand it for most of my life.
Mm,
When I was growing up, creativity was seen as a waste of time. Like it was
mm,
mainly seen as like, painting or
mm,
drawing
mm,
or yeah, like fine arts.
mm,
I not even like music. Like I played the piano when I was a kid, but that was not a creative pursuit. It was an
mm,
academic pursuit.
mm,
So I grew up thinking that creativity was a waste of time.
mm,
But then maybe only a couple of years ago, I went into business by myself. Like
mm,
I'm self-employed now,
mm,
and I started reading all this stuff, like your quote about Steve Jobs,
mm,
and even like I saw on your website about Albert Einstein how he
mm,
says something like creativity is the highest form of intelligence or something like
mm,
that.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and I was going, I have totally misunderstood creativity. Like I do not know what it is.
mm,
I feel like I'm some sort of like outer space robot going, what is this thing?
mm, mm, mm.
um so I wonder like what happened in my own education, like why did I not understand that, and why didn't I feel that it was important? And I can see like you obviously from what I can understand of your teaching that you think that it's really important.
Mhm.
Can you talk a bit about that?
About why it's important.
Yeah, about why it's important, and then also like how do you teach it?
Oh, how? Okay, so, I think we kind of agree that it's important. I think, well, like if you just look at history, for example, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest changes are like you can't, you don't, not many big changes um are made just by following instructions, I guess.
Mm.
Right? And like you need ideas, right? Like even in science, right? Like you need a
Mm.
hypothesis, right? You need
Mm-hmm.
to think, why is this happening? You need to, it's like, maybe it's this, and then you test it out, right? But if you can't tell me what the maybe is, then
Mm.
how are you going to test it out, right? You have nothing to test.
Yes.
So that requires some, I don't know, insight, intelligence, or creativity, right? This is,
Yeah.
yeah,
See,
kind
that's
of
I
thing.
think that's what I didn't realize. Like
Yeah,
ideas are actually creativity. It's not
yeah.
just about painting
Yeah, oh
or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I think painting, I mean, the actual act of painting is really more of a skill. It's actually like, your hand manipulation, all that kind of stuff, right? Your
Yeah.
control and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And the creativity is like the
The I
formation of the ideas
Yeah,
before
the
you even,
ideas before
yeah,
you actually do
yeah.
it. So I was saying
Mm,
how do you teach it and why
mm,
is it important?
mm. I mean, well, I guess the way I teach it is by learning myself and like learning new ideas and be willing to
Mm.
learn, right? So
Mm-hmm.
being teachable myself, and I'm always listening to whatever it is, like whether it's podcasts or watching new videos or
Mm.
making an effort to actually, and the more you do it, the more it's again, it's not supposed to be a chore, right? Like I mean, most people
Mm.
enjoy watching videos, really. I mean, like most people, like, lots of kids waste time doing, on
Mm-hmm.
social media and everything, right? It's just what you choose to watch
Yes.
during the time.
Mm.
So it's not really like it's a chore, but if you, as long as you just make a bit of a step, and once you get started and you get used to the idea of learning, it becomes a lot more effortless, right?
Mm.
But I think it's hard to change the system right now, so it takes a bit of effort to start. But once, I guess, as far as I can tell, once my students get used to it, right, it's they just really like, oh, they come to class and just like, okay, like, we can talk about anything. They can say, okay, what do you want to learn today? I
Mm.
literally ask them, what do you want to learn today? Right? And then they will tell me, right? Young kids, old kids, doesn't really matter. They'll tell me what they want to learn.
Mm.
And
Mm.
like, I wonder how many students in schools can do that, right?
Mm.
You ask them and they have like no idea. It's like, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? Or
Mm.
whatever. They just have no idea, basically. Just
You mean
literally.
you mean they can't do that because they have no idea what they want to learn, or they can't do that because they're not really asked what they want to learn?
Well, yeah, you're right. They're not really asked. That's one thing, of
No,
course.
I
But
don't think
even
they
if
are.
they were asked, they
Mm.
probably couldn't give an answer because they've been trained since young to
Mm.
just, just trust me, just listen to me, that kind of thing,
Yep. Yep.
right? And that's a huge shame, right?
Mm.
Because and I think mentioned that statistic by NASA that most young kids are creative geniuses,
Yeah.
like literally like genius levels of creativity, and then you destroy it
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
just telling them no, just listen to
Yeah,
me,
just listen
just
to me. I
yeah,
feel like that. I feel like I
yeah,
was one of those kids. I feel like
yeah,
maybe when I was a kid, I was a bit more creative.
yeah,
And now I had to refine that as
yeah,
an
exactly,
adult because I realized like, God, it's really important when you're in business and you got to think of all the ideas yourself. Like, I
yeah,
mean, I've got
yeah,
to figure out how to do things and think of new ways of doing things to make it
yeah,
better. And I realized that is creativity.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't know that that's
Mm,
actually considered creative.
So, I mean, I think part of the problem is that I think a lot of early childhood educators, right, understand that idea. I think they appreciate how important creativity and all these kind of other things, whether it's even things like being self-regulation, emotional regulation, or whatever it is, just being well adjusted and all that kind of like skills, so called, right? But the problem is they are part of a system,
Yeah.
that goes up to university,
Mm.
right? And that's what the universities have said that they want,
Yes.
right? And so then the year 12s, the high schools have to cater to that. And because of that, then it trickles down, right? So the junior schools or maybe the mid primary or the senior primary or whatever
Yeah, they have
have
to
to keep
prepare
growing
for
up.
the
Like,
next
oh,
level.
we need to prepare you to be able to
Yes.
sit down for
Yeah.
half an hour or whatever for a lesson because that's what's expected of you, in the next year, right?
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
But does it have to be like that? I mean, I'm not saying there's no benefit, right? Obviously,
Mm.
okay, that's discipline. That's true, right? You can
Mm.
learn something from everything,
Yep.
but we should be trying to make the system as efficient as possible. That we're learning the right things, we're learning
Yeah.
the most things,
Yep.
right? And so that's where my concern is that we
Mm.
are actually not going down that path. Mm,
Mm.
mm,
Mm. So when you ask like your students, what do you want to learn today?
mm,
I think a lot of teachers wouldn't do that because, well, firstly, if you're teaching in a school, don't you have to teach to a curriculum?
mhm,
Like you've got to teach certain things,
mm,
so it's a bit restrictive. Like you can't say, "What do you want to learn today?" and then just teach that.
Well, again, so partly it's efficiency, right? So,
Mm.
like if you, I feel like if you know how to teach, you can teach things in much less time, right?
Mm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, right? I mean, like, so I've been doing this for ages, right? Like, and none of my students have said, oh, can none of my students have complained, like, oh, instead of teaching biology, you spent half an hour like talking about like why you want to be a doctor and making us watch videos,
Mm.
right? None of my students have said that,
Mm.
right? And they would if they felt like they weren't getting value out of it, or
Mm.
if they felt like I was actually taking time away from their studies because students still want to do well, right? No matter what.
Yeah, it's a high
So if they
achieving student.
felt like
Mm-hmm.
I was actually,
Wasting their time.
basically, yeah,
Mm.
then they would say something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, definitely, and they don't, right?
Mm.
For my classes, like it was always full, right? And
Mm.
and students from other tutes would transfer to my tutes. They would want to sit
Mm.
on the floor even because we ran out of chairs or something, and they just sit on the floor. It's okay, I'll just sit on the floor. It's fine, right? That kind of thing,
Mm.
just to attend to you, right? So, I mean, if I were wasting the time, then they wouldn't do that.
Right.
So partly it's efficiency, right? I guess
Mm-hmm.
you need to know. Okay, so what do you need to know, right? Out of this, right? So
Mm.
this is what you need to know. That's
Yeah.
the gist of it, right? But also being able to link that to other other ideas that I think are actually more meaningful. But I'm using that whole idea of like thinking about what you want to do in life, right? And applying to them, right? And so if my students want to learn about marble runs or whatever, I use that and I teach them about gravity and physics and I don't know, it could be say how materials engineering or whatever it is. If they
Mm.
want to learn about World War II, then we talk about ethics and geography and history and politics
Mm.
and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So and one thing can lead to another,
Mm.
and that's what's fun about it because it's like you kind of don't even really know where it's going to go. And then it's you're also learning with them at the same
Mm.
time in a sense.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, like a couple of my students, they were interested in World War II just because we talked. I think I showed a video about it once because it reminded me of something else.
Mm.
And from that, they wanted to learn about World War II. And
Mm-hmm.
then we watched a video, a film about it.
Mm.
Jojo Rabbit, pretty good film actually by Taika Waititi.
Mm.
And yeah, that tells you about how how people used to think that Jews were like the Germans, right?
Mm.
Were the German children were basically indoctrinated into thinking that Jewish people were like had horns and all that sort of stuff and whatever. That tells you a lot of things. It tells you about, but first of all, you're studying about film, which is important in English for one thing, right? Because film analysis is part of English. It tells you about persuasion. It tells you about perspective. It helps you question what do you really believe in, right? Do you believe in it because of a real reason or because someone else told you, right? Look, and and it's fun. It's a film, right? They watch the film. It's a comedy as well. So like they have fun watching it, and it's like it's a dark comedy. It's a black comedy.
Right.
So
Okay.
I know. It's just like learning is supposed to be fun, and if I mean like not it's the reason why I teach by myself is because I'm not confident that I can teach that to another teacher, I guess. Right. So but I guess that's something that's different from other places. And so for parents who appreciate that sort of stuff, then I guess that's good. But personally, I think everyone should teach like that. How to do that? I think that's a very big question. I mean, like you need to probably rethink the whole education system or whatever it is. I learned it the hard way by myself, but
I think to be able to do that, I mean, you would have had to have a lot of knowledge about other aspects other than what you're specializing in. So, like, I mean, you're talking about ethics, you're talking about literature, film, and then, you also teach science. So, I think that's a problem for many teachers.
That's a problem. So that's why a lot of teachers can't do it, because they don't want to open themselves up to that possibility, because it's like they're going to get screwed if they they ask something like that and then they can't answer the question or something, right? But I mean, for me at least, I guess like I don't know everything. I am open about it and I tell them like I might make mistakes and everything.
Explore together.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
If you disagree with me, you tell me, right? Like I don't want you to. I guess I'm being very. I try my best to be authentic, right? And I think most students appreciate it, really. I mean, sometimes I do have students, I mean, to be fair, who, maybe they're going through a lot in life or whatever it is, and, they just really, they can't handle that whole thing. They just really, they're just looking at maybe the next day. They're looking at
they're probably going, well, I need to sit this exam. Why are you telling me about, like, why are you asking me these weird questions?
Yeah.
So is it going to be on the exam or not?
Yeah. Exactly. So and like it's not gonna fit, right? And like maybe they at this point in life they can't do that. That's fine. But I mean, I've seen this work, even for year 12 students, and I'm very proud of my older students. I'm proud of all my students really, but students who are approaching exam and still bring in that same attitude to learning, which I mean I'm very sure will help them more in life than whatever their marks, whatever their marks end up being. So I'm very sure of that, right? But I can completely understand that a lot of students will find it hard to accept. But those that don't regret it, I guess.
I guess it's hard to sell as a package, I imagine, for you as well.
Exactly.
Because there's nothing, it's not as defined as perhaps some other, businesses or tuition companies. It's not as well, I'm going to get you into selective school, or I'm going to get you, help you get a scholarship or something like that. Whereas when you're going, I'm going to teach you about life. I mean, exactly, that's very broad.
Yeah, I know. It's a very big claim. It's a very vague claim in a sense. A lot of it relies on trust. A lot of it, and that's why I put myself out there and I go, this is who I am, right? And I guess I think most people have a reasonable idea of who I am after reading through my bio, or after having like a like I meet them usually once and I explain how I work and everything. I think most people have a reasonable idea of whether that's what they're looking for or not. And if it's not, it's fine. Again, right? Like, I'm one person. I don't need to teach the whole world and everything. That's okay, right? But
select audience.
Yeah. And so I mean, and like even this move, right? Like the reason why I came on my own is because I felt like I really wanted to teach things that I think children, students would benefit from, and not really just try. I mean, I have been working within the system, right? Like I do put in as much of my ideas as possible within the general framework of, okay, they need to learn this. And I still do for VC and stuff like that. but it's harder to do it within an institution than it is on your own. And so
Mm.
I guess for me, it was a very honestly daunting decision to do it. It took a lot of, I guess, courage, I feel, on my part
Yeah,
to
to
do
come
it.
out on your
I know
own.
my wife was freaking out and
I can
and that
imagine.
kind of stuff, and even things like things like having free study guides and stuff like that, right? Like people are saying like, are you crazy? That's like who's gonna go study with you if you give away all the
If you
material
give
for
away
free,
your
right?
stuff.
like that kind of stuff. But I thought about it a lot, I prayed about it a lot, and I thought I think that's really how education should be.
Mm.
Um, well, for one thing, like some random, say, fresh year 12 graduate couldn't do that because no one would listen to them, right?
Mm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I have had the experience now and
Mm.
the teaching and stuff. I think someone has to start, right? Someone has to lead. So fine, I'll start, right? So I'll do the guide. I hope that people will contribute to it and other kind of stuff. But fine, I'll start because I really believe that the value that I'm giving people is not through this quote means this and that quote means that and whatever. If you want that, here you go, it's free. Go
Mm.
take it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I teach people how to communicate. I teach people about how to think and that
Mm.
sort of stuff, which is important for English as well, right? Like especially now with like creative writing in English, it's now in the VC curriculum and everything. I think that's something that a lot of people will find challenging because
Mm.
most the extent that most people kind of like think of with creative writing is show don't tell, as in put more descriptive language and stuff like that.
Mm.
But it's not really about that. It's really more about the ideas, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so
Mm,
too.
mm,
I think how can you write if you don't have
mm,
the right ideas?
mm. Yeah, I mean, there's also students with really very strong command of language,
Mm.
but then it's just the content's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard to build up, to be honest. I mean, like
Mm.
if you're not used to thinking that way, it's very hard to come up with ideas.
Mm.
So in some sense, you can argue that what I'm offering is actually worth a lot more than what other people offer. Because it's easy to teach the skills, it's not easy to teach
Mm.
the creativity behind it.
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah. No, I think it sounds like quite a unique sort of
mm,
offering that you
mm,
have, and quite appealing to perhaps somebody like me,
mm.
for my own daughter, because she, like you said, doesn't love school.
Okay,
Um,
really?
no, not really.
Okay.
She's a good student. Like she's a goody two shoes sort of student. But she has this immense passion for science.
Mm.
And she never gets enough at school. Like
Oh,
she
okay.
doesn't. Yeah, not enough classes, not enough time spent on. I mean, her school's pretty good, but
Mm.
very one class a week for half the term, 2 terms a year, sort of
Oh,
thing.
okay. Okay. Right.
And she's like, I want to do science all the time. Like I wish
Oh,
all
okay.
classes were science.
Mm. Mm.
So I mean, if you said to her, "What do you want to learn?" she'd be like, "Oh my god, I've got all these things that I want to learn," because she
Yeah.
watches the stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
She watches things outside. She wants me to find her science classes outside of school.
Yeah.
But there's very very little on offer.
Mm. 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 Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I think it's appealing to a certain kind of audience, and I
Mm.
think people do appreciate that you are authentic.
Mm.
Because not everybody wants to get into selective school. Not everybody wants to
Mm.
go to sit top
Mm.
level exams, but
Mm.
some students and some parents want their kids to learn.
Mm. Mm.
To be
Mm.
educated.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Mm.
that's. I think you possibly might be on a good path there.
Mm. Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, hopefully, there's enough people that appreciate that and everything like that. And honestly, it's been going pretty well so far. So I'm grateful for parents and students who appreciate. I guess for me personally as teachers, that's I'm sure a lot of teachers will agree that that's really the most rewarding thing, right? That your students actually appreciate what you do
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like words, right? Like words that they say to you, to me mean more than like whether it's gifts or anything else. Yeah. So yeah.
Do you think that your offering would fly in Singapore? Do you think if you went back to Singapore and said, "This is what I offer," do you think people would take it up?
I'm sure there'll be. I mean, like I guess I am. You know, I teach by myself, and so I am not preoccupied with like trying to grow and trying to like create a huge business or whatever it is. And so in that sense, it is a bit more. The risk is lower. Because my expectations are low, and
Yeah,
I'm not
you
trying
don't need
to.
like a million clients. Like you
Yeah,
need
yeah,
several to
yeah.
make a living.
So are there going to be some people who don't like the traditional kind of way of teaching and would like this more exploratory kind? Yeah, I think there will be enough. I mean, I guess like I mentioned before, I think for me it's more of just like the whole. I don't really want to get into an advertising business and that kind of thing. Although it's really quite important. But yeah, I mean, so for me, it's really more of the getting people to know that this exists.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I hope that being a sponsor of Melbourne schools will help you.
yeah. I mean, I think I really I think it's really because obviously we talked about it before, and I really appreciate that our values are quite aligned and everything, and that I also get to help, like genuinely get to help parents who are struggling and be part of a community, and like that to me is something that like parents like thank me for giving them advice or whatever it is and not paying or whatever, and it's fine. And yeah, that kind of that does keep me going, to be honest. It keeps me it helps. I think everyone in whatever job they're in needs to have some sort of purpose, and I think that for me gives me the purpose.
Yeah. And you know what? In a funny way, because you are there for the right reasons, I think you'll probably be more successful.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
And people
right?
people
yeah.
see through like sales and advertising. So I think people can see that.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think so, but then again, I think there are a lot of like really, really huge. I'm talking about like tutoring. Like, I'm just talking about in general, like, like whether it's Coca-Cola or whatever,
like marketing.
companies. Yeah. I mean, clearly there is a way to manipulate people or whatever that will make you very rich, I guess. But I've always been very hesitant to go down that road.
I know.
Yeah.
And I have a marketing background, so obviously I have a different view on that. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
You have an offering that is valuable, that will benefit people and their students, and it's different and it's unique. Marketing is just telling people about it.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you want to tell people about it?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not selling something that's dodgy. You're not selling something that's defunct or doesn't work, or you're ripping people off. You're selling a service that's valuable, and nobody wants to be sold to, but everybody wants to buy something, and they want to buy something good. So
that's true. Yeah.
So yeah, I think don't be so shy, and don't be so coy about selling yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I think we've spoken a lot about how you work and the education systems as well. I'd love to hear more about you next time, about your experience at university and your views about that, because I think we've got a lot to. Well, I have a lot of opinions about university as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I can interview you then.
Yes, just my personal opinions. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for your time speaking to me. And also obviously thank you for sponsoring Melbourne Schools and being part of our community. I really appreciate that.
Much. Yeah, no, I really enjoy so far it's been great. I really enjoy doing this, and hopefully like it'll be a long-term thing. And I think you've helped me tremendously as well, right, with advice and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm glad that that it's a very good kind of like collaboration and partnership. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
See ya.
See you.
Thanks for joining me on this podcast. Remember that the content that you hear on this podcast is of a general nature and should not be used to make any decisions about schools or anything else. If you want to learn more about schools in Melbourne, make sure you visit the website www.melbourneschools.com.au. You can also join thousands of other parents in our community at Melbourne Schools Discussion Group on Facebook. See you there.